Om Vishwandarpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyannijantargatam Pashyannatmani Mayaya Bahirivod Bhutan Yatha Nidraya Yasakshat Kurute Prabodha Samaye Svatmanamevadvayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye नारायणं पद्मभुवं वसिष्ठं शक्तिं च तत्पुत्रपराशरं च व्यासं शुकं गौडपदं महान्तं गोविन्दयोगीन्द्रमथास्य शिष्यं श्रीशङ्कराचार्यमथास्य पद्मपादं च हस्तामलकं च शिष्यं तन्तोटकं वार्तिककारमन्यान् अस्मद्गुरून् सन्ततमानतोऽस्मि श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः परब्रह्मनिष्ठं स्वतो धर्मनिष्ठं अहिंसैकनिष्ठं स्वशिष्यै सुजुष्टं यतीनां वरिष्ठं गुरूणां गरिष्ठं दयानन्दरूपं मदाचार्यमीडे नमः श्री परमार्थाय संसाराध्यासनाशिने श्रोत्रियब्रह्मनिष्ठाय तस्मै ब्रह्मविदे नमः सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ वासुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते. I welcome you all to the 52nd class of the Fundamentals of Vedanta series. Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. This is the vision that Tattvabodha wants us to come to. That you are the Satyam and everything else is Mithya. You belong to a higher order of reality. Everything else is in a lower order of reality. How absurd it would be if the gold were to complain that I am suffering because I changed from a necklace to a bangle or from a bangle to a ring. How absurd it would be if the sand were to complain that I am getting wet because there's a mirage water all around me. How absurd it is if the waker says that I am affected by the dream. I am really affected by the dream. We are able to see all of these statements as being absurd. But then I am saying that I am affected by this world. I am affected by this body and the mind. I have samsara. I have this endless struggle for fulfillment. So in the vision of Vedanta, all of these statements are equally absurd. And if we ask why, Vedanta has given the answer, Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. Such statements can arise only in the non-recognition of the reality. Such statements arise only out of ignorance. Ignorance of one's own real nature. So Vedanta is saying, you are the Satyam, everything else is Mithya. Understand this, because only in this understanding lies your liberation. Your liberation from this suffering that you have brought upon yourself by not understanding what the reality is. This is the final vision that Vedanta is trying to hammer into us. Atma Satyam Tad Anyat Sarvam Mithyeti. And how does Vedanta communicate this? We said there are three pillars for the Vedantic teaching. Brahma Satyam is the first pillar. Jagan Mithya is the second pillar. And the third pillar is Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. That this Jivaha is not separate from Brahman. So Brahman is the Satyam, Jagat is Mithya, and this Jiva is identical with Brahman. We saw the Srishti Prakriya. Through the Srishti Prakriya, Vedanta is teaching us Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. And before this creation came, there were two factors. One is Brahman, the other is Maya. Brahman is this attributeless, changeless consciousness, primordial, attributeless, changeless consciousness, which is the Vivarta Upadana Karanam, the changeless material cause for the entire creation. But then Brahman alone cannot account for this plurality, and therefore Vedanta also brings in Maya. Says that just as the tree is unmanifest in the seed, just as the movie is unmanifest in the DVD, and just as the dream is unmanifest in the waker's mind, similarly, the entire world that is about to emerge is unmanifest in Maya. The Maya is this unmanifest world. The manifest Maya is called the world. Maya consists of all the unmanifest names and forms that are about to emerge in the creation. And as we said, manifestation is a preferable word as compared to creation. Brahmashreya Maya. Maya doesn't have independent existence. It depends upon Brahman for its existence. And therefore, the world, which is nothing but an evolute of Maya, which has evolved out of Maya, is also dependent upon Brahman for its existence. Therefore, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This is what we have to understand from the Srishti Prakriya. But then one can ask that, okay, let Brahman be the Satyam, let the Jagat be the Mithya. But then, what has that got to do with me? How do I gain from whatever you're talking about? That is where the third pillar comes in, Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. That you, the Jiva, you are identical with that Brahman. This is what you have to understand for liberation from samsara. And how does Vedanta teach this? It teaches this through the Mahavakya. Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. So this is what we were discussing in the last few classes, the Mahavakya. Now we see during the Srishti, there is a Sharira Trayam that comes about, and then Prapancha Trayam also emerges from Maya. But then, as we saw, Maya is itself inert, Jadam. It doesn't have an iota of consciousness of its own. And so the products of Maya, the Sharira Trayam and the Prapancha Trayam, they are also inert by nature. But then we see that this body-mind is sentient. How does it become sentient? We took the example of the moon. How does a non-luminous moon become luminous? By borrowing the sunlight. Surya Pratibimba is formed on the moon. And then the moon it becomes luminous and it's also able to illumine other things around it. Similarly, the Sharira Trayam is inert. But then when it's pervaded by Brahma Chaitanyam, then the Brahma Pratibimba is formed in the Sharira Trayam that we call the reflected consciousness. And then matter begins to behave as if it were sentient. So this starts to say, I am. Matter in combination with the Brahma Pratibimba, becomes self-aware. It says, I am. It knows that I am there, and it also knows a few other things are there around it. Just like the moon becomes luminous, and it's also able to illumine some things around it. So this Brahma Pratibimba in the Sharira Trayam is what we call Jivaha. Similarly, in the Prapanchatrayam also, when it's pervaded by Brahma Chaitanyam, the Brahma Pratibimba is formed in the Prapanchatrayam, and this total begins to behave like an immense organism, pervaded by consciousness, pervaded by intelligence. And this Brahma Pratibimba in the Prapanchatrayam is what we call Ishvara. So Jivaha is the reflected consciousness, RC, in the reflecting media of the Shariratrayam, RM of the Shariratrayam. When it's pervaded by the Brahma Chaitanyam, which is the original consciousness, the OC. So there are three factors involved in matter becoming sentient: the RC, the reflected consciousness, the RM, the reflecting media, and the OC, the original consciousness. So similarly, Ishvaraha is the reflected consciousness, RC, in the reflecting media of the Prapanchatrayam, when it's pervaded by the OC, the original consciousness, which is Brahma Chaitanya. So now, if we look at it from the point of view of the reflecting media, then the Jivatma and Paramatma are very different, diagonally opposite. But then what Vedanta points out is that the situation is similar to a situation where I am standing in front of two mirrors. One is a convex mirror, the other is a concave mirror. In the convex mirror, my reflection is small. In the concave mirror, my reflection appears magnified. But both of these are distorted versions of the original. In the original phase, there is no smallness, there is no bigness. Similarly, the Jivatma has got the inferior attributes, Paramatma has got the superior attributes. But the original consciousness is attributeless. Therefore, both are distortions of the original. Really speaking, there is only one original phase that is appearing as two. Similarly, there is one original consciousness that is appearing as two because of differences in the reflecting media. But the Jivatma does not know this. The Jivatma doesn't know that the RC, which is the Jivatma, the reflected consciousness, doesn't know that my real nature is OC. And why is it so? Why doesn't the Jivatma know? Because the reflecting media is tainted with ignorance. The Karana Sharira, which is a part of the Sharira Trayam, is Sat Swarupa Jnanam Anirvachyanadya Vidya Rupam. It is of the nature of ignorance. Therefore, this reflection gets mixed up with that ignorance. And therefore, it doesn't know that my original nature is the OC. And therefore, it mistakes the reflection itself to be the original, just like the moon beginning to think that I am the source of my luminosity, which is not true. But out of ignorance, the Jivatma thinks that this RC, this consciousness, the sentiency that I experience in the body mind, this is the original consciousness. And worse, it begins to mix up the attributes of the reflecting media with the reflected consciousness and then starts to say, I am this body, I am this mind. It even thinks that this consciousness experienced in the body mind is a product of matter. And therefore, asti, jayate, vardhate, viparinamate, apakshiyate, vinashyati, all of these changes that are happening in the reflecting media, the jiva says, I am going through these changes. I am born, I am growing, I am decaying, I am dying. So Tattvabodha says, as long as one continues to think that the distortions are the reality, until then the samsara will not go. Janma maranadi rupa. Samsaro na nivartate. Will not go. As long as one is seeing this distance between Jivatma and Paramatma, yavat paryantam जीवेश्वरयोः भेद दृष्टिः तिष्ठति तावत् पर्यन्तं samsaro na nivartate. Why? Because one is taking the distortions to be the original, the distortions to be the reality, and therefore one is seeing a distance between Jivatma and Paramatma. It is like somebody saying that, really speaking, there are two faces in those mirrors, which are different. That is very far from what the truth is. So until then, this struggle will continue, the struggle of the jiva will continue, because the jiva has made a mistake out of ignorance and has taken the limited attributes of the reflecting media to be his own attributes. Therefore, jiva becomes apurnaha and then tries to gain purnatvam through the pursuit of the first three purusharthas. And that effort is futile, can never become purnaha until he wakes up to what his real nature is. So then, what is the answer? How does one remove this samsara? The answer is, see that this apurnatvam, you don't even have a trace of this apurnatvam. How do I see that I am not apurna? See yourself as purna. Then how do I see myself as purna? See that there is no distance between Jivatma and Paramatma, that Jivatma and Paramatma are really one. Now, how do I see that Jivatma and Paramatma are one? That is where the Mahavakya Vichara comes in. And as we said, that there are certain kinds of knowledge that can be gained only through the Vedika Shabda Pramana. And the Mahavakyas are the sentences in the Vedas that reveal the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam. So Tattvamasi, you are Ishvaraha, is what the Veda is telling me. But then we saw that the student raises an objection. Is what we discussed in the last class. Jivatma and Paramatma are diametrically opposite. One is Alpagyaha, the other is Sarvagyaha. One is Alpashaktiman, the other is Sarvashaktiman. One is Karta Bhokta under the clutches of the law of karma, the other is the Karma Phaladata. One is Sahankaraha, has got this limited individuality with a certain biography, a date of birth, and potential date of death. Whereas the other is Nirahankaraha, has got no such limited individuality. So how can they be one? Because the differences are so vast. This is where we pointed out that the Mahavakya is an equation. An equation is not required when the two sides are evidently the same. 7 equals 7. It's not telling me anything new that I don't already know. On the other hand, an equation becomes impossible if the two sides are evidently different. 7 equals 8, an impossible equation. Even in mathematics, an equation is brought in when the two sides look different, but there's an underlying oneness. And that oneness is something that has to be understood through the teaching of how the equation really works. Why is there a oneness? This has to be taught. So similarly, the Mahavakya is also an equation. Where on one side there is a Jivatma, on the other side there is Paramatma. The differences are vast. But there is an equation presented by the Veda because there is a oneness that I have to understand. So how do I understand this oneness? And this is where we came to the meanings of the words. What meaning a word conveys and what meaning do I take? That is very important in my own understanding of various sentences in this world. Like we said, I want to buy a pot. When I say I want to buy a pot, in this sentence, the word pot conveys its total meaning, which includes the pot as well as the underlying clay. And the seller also understands that is what I mean. On the other hand, when I say I ate a banana, in that the word banana doesn't convey the total meaning that includes the peel. I'm able to peel off the peel. I'm able to remove the peel from my understanding of the word banana and understand that the person who says this has eaten the fruit, not the peel. Similarly, when one says that I am fat, in this, the word I, the total meaning includes this body, the mind, the jnanendriyas, the karmendriyas, the consciousness, etc. But when somebody says I am fat, I am able to filter out whatever is unwanted and then retain what is wanted. I am able to see that what he is referring to is the physical body. When somebody says I am emotional, again I am able to filter out the unwanted parts of the total meaning and understand that he is referring to the mind. Similarly, in the sentence, you, the wave, are the ocean. If we take the literal meaning of the wave and the ocean, literal meaning we call the vachyartha, the meaning that conveys the total object, the vachyartha. If we take the vachyartha, then the sentence cannot make any sense at all. But then the sentence is conveying something deeper. It's an equation. Therefore, it has to be understood. Therefore, I have to discard the vachyartha and come to the lakshyartha, the implied or the intended meaning. The implied or the intended meaning in this case is the water. If we take the wave, if we filter out the nama-rupa and take the water aspect of the total wave, and if we take the water aspect of the total ocean, then in this there is an identity between the two. In fact, one water alone appears as both the wave and the ocean. So this discarding of the vachyartha, of the literal meaning, and coming to the intended implied meaning, that intended implied meaning is called lakshyartha. So then the sentence makes perfect sense and conveys something very profound. Similarly, this Devadattaha is that Devadattaha. In this Devadattaha, the Devadattaha I am looking at has got this beard, a bald head, a paunch, and spectacles. Whereas that Devadattaha is this young boy, about 8 years old, with jet black hair, very thin. If we take the literal meanings of the two, then the sentence fails to convey what it wants to convey. Therefore, what do? I filter out the unwanted aspects of this, and I am able to then see that what the sentence is referring to is this one person behind the two. There is indeed one person behind the two. Both of them are identical. So what Vedanta tells me is that if I have some discomfort in accepting that this Tattvamasi, the Mahavakya, and what Vedanta says is that you have not been able to come to the Lakshyartha. You are still in Vachyartha, and that is why you are resisting the acceptance of what I am telling you. The Vachyartha refers to the Shariratrayam with the RC and the OC. The Lakshyartha refers to the Prapanchatrayam with the RC and the OC. The two are vastly different. One has inferior attributes, the other has superior attributes. If you take the Vachyartha, indeed Vedanta agrees there can be no equality. But then still the Mahavakya is there to tell me something profound. That there is an identity I have to understand. You are indeed one with Ishvara, just as this Devadatta is indeed one with that Devadatta. So to understand this, I have to come to the Lakshyartha. And what is the Lakshyartha here? I have to remove the parts of the two sides that are obstructing this identity. What is obstructing this identity? I have to remove the Shariratrayam. I have to set it aside in my understanding. And along with the Shariratrayam, the reflected consciousness also goes. Then on this side, I have to set aside the Prapanchatrayam in my understanding. Along with the Prapanchatrayam, the reflected consciousness also goes. And what is left is the original consciousness. Are the two different? No, there is just one original consciousness. What difference can there be in the two original consciousnesses that are attributeless? In fact, there are no two, there is only one attributeless original consciousness. So what the Mahavakya is telling me, that there is one consciousness behind both you as well as Ishvara. One is appearing as two, just as the one face appears as these two reflections. So when I understand the Mahavakya, there is one Advaita Atma that is left behind. And I am that Advaita Atma. So before the Mahavakya, the Jiva has got these two misunderstandings. One is that Ishvaraha is Parokshaha. Somewhere else, if you ask him, where is Ishvara? He'll say, I don't know. It's somewhere. And people have this idea that Ishvara is somewhere in Kailasha or Vaikuntha, etc. Somewhere remote. And the second misunderstanding is that I am limited. I am parichinnaha. The Jivaha is parichinnaha, Ishvaraha is parokshaha. This is the understanding. Misunderstanding. But then what does the Mahavakya do? After the Mahavakya, when one really understands the Mahavakya, when one comes to the Lakshyartha, then one cannot say Ishvara is parokshaha anymore. If we ask somebody, where is Ishvara? He will say Ishvara is here and now. Where is Ishvara? As this very I. This very consciousness that I am referring to as I, that I is not different from Ishvara. Then what happens to the second misunderstanding? Earlier I thought I was parichinnaha, I am limited. But now what does this person who has understood the Mahavakya? He says, I am aparichinnaha. Why? Because I am one with Brahman. The original consciousness, which is Satyam, and being Satyam, it is free of those threefold limitations of space, time, and object. That Brahman which was there at the beginning of creation, lending existence and consciousness to the entire creation. that Brahman I am. So parichinnatvam of the jiva goes away, parokshatvam of Ishvara also goes away. And what is left is one aparichinna, aparoksha Brahma Atma. And that I am. In this understanding, one sees that I am this Satyam Brahma. And being Satyam Brahma, I am Purna. Because I am free of space-wise limitation, I am free of this time-wise limitation, I am free of any object-wise limitation also, being the Satyam. Atma Satyam Tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. So now, if there is a resistance to accepting this teaching from the Veda, if I am not able to see this, then what Vedanta says is that I have not been able to see the Lakshyartha. Because if I can see the Lakshyartha, then there is identity, there is nothing obstructing the identity. So if I am not able to see the Lakshyartha, I am still in some Vachyartha. Then the identity cannot be seen. The Vedanta says that if I am in this position, that means that some qualification is missing. Because I am not able to come to the Lakshyartha that is intended by the Guru, by Vedanta, by the Upanishad. Because when Vedanta says, you are Ishvaraha, we have to imagine that there is a laser pointer that the Guru has. The Guru is pointing to the laser pointer to this consciousness aspect of this Jiva. And saying, you are Ishvaraha, meaning he is referring to that consciousness, not to any other part of the Shariratraya or this reflected consciousness. He is referring to the OC. But if the student finds that I am not able to see exactly what the Guru is saying, I'm not able to filter out the other parts of the Vachyartha and see the Lakshyartha, then that means that there is some qualification that I have to work on. And the two qualifications that become especially important here are Vivekaha and Vairagyam. Vivekaha, this Panchakosha Vivekaha, Atma Anatma Vivekaha, Panchakosha Vivekaha, Drigdrishya Vivekaha, Avasthatraya Vivekaha. All of this that we discussed, they all help in bringing one to the Lakshyartha. That is the first step. That is why Sthula Sukshma Karana Sharirat Vyatiriktah Panchakoshatita San Avasthatraya Sakshi Satchidananda Swarupa Sanyastishtati Sa Atma. That teaching was given out first. That is the Tvam Padatha Shodhanam that has to be done. One has to see the Lakshyartha of the Tvam Pada. So all of this Vivekaha helps in coming to the Lakshyartha. For this, I have to cultivate this Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. This qualification has to be cultivated, and this all of this Panchakosha Prakriya, Avasthatraya Prakriya, Atma Anatma Prakriya, Drigdrishya Viveka Prakriya, all of that has to be done. And the second important qualification is Vairagyam. Lack of Vairagyam means clinging on to the Anitya Vastu. There is some clinging to the Anitya Vastu. As long as this clinging, longing, holding on to the Anitya Vastu is there, one will find it difficult to come to the Lakshyartha. One has to be, when the Guru is saying you, at the time of Shravanam, I have to be able to drop everything. Only then one can come to the Lakshana and the Mahavakya can make sense. At the time of Shravanam, if I am thinking of my body, the mind, the family, the profession, possessions, again the Mahavakya will not work. Why? Because I am in some aspect of the Vachyartha and things that are bothering the Vachyartha. And that is why there is an emphasis on the qualifications. How the adhikari becomes an adhikari. What Vedanta says is that assuming there's an adhikari who listens to the Mahavakya, that teaching is enough to liberate the adhikari. Nothing more is required. One has to just see this truth. Just as when I see the rope as a rope, then I am immediately freed of the fear of the snake. Why? Because I realized all of that was born out of ignorance. And that is why these qualifications become important. And therefore, if I'm not able to get the message of the Mahavakya, then one doesn't need to despair. What Vedanta says is gain the qualification and then come back to this. Repeat the Shravanam, repeat the Shravanam. How long do I repeat the Shravanam? Until the knowledge takes place. This is the process I have to follow. So how do I gain the qualifications? We have looked at it in detail. For the sake of the qualifications, I have to come to Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga with this Dvaita Bhakti. I have to, for the time being, accept that Ishvara and Jiva are different. And then go through Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga with an attitude of Bhakti. And that will enable me to gain the qualifications. But I cannot remain there. I cannot remain there. Yavat paryantam jiveshvara bheda drishtihi tishtati tavat paryantam janma maranadi rupa samsaro na nivartate. Samsara will not go as long as this bheda drishti is there. And therefore, I have to use this Dvaita Bhakti. I have to use the Dvaita sadhanas like Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga. But then I have to come to Advaitam. So in this context, we give the example of the pole vaulter. We look at the Olympics and all that. There's this pole vaulter who carries a pole. What does he do? He runs with the pole. And then he firmly plants the pole to the ground. And then the pole gives him a certain elevation. Now, what does he do? After he has gained the elevation, his aim is to cross over that bar. And holding on to the pole, he cannot cross over that bar. He will come crashing to the ground. So he has to let go of the pole and then he glides over the bar. Similarly, we say, use this Dvaita sadhanas, use the Dvaita sadhanas as a sadhana. So that is like the pole. One has to use the Dvaita sadhanas. One has to use Dvaita bhakti. And that enables one to gain this elevation, which is the chitta shuddhi, these qualifications. But once one gains the qualifications, one has to come to Vedanta, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam. And what does one do at that point? One cannot hold on to this pole. One has to drop the pole of Dvaitam. And then there is this bar. There is this bar that represents samsara. Holding on to the pole of Dvaitam, I cannot cross that bar. I will be limited in my own vision. I will not be Purna. And therefore, one drops the pole and then glides over, crosses over the bar of samsara. So this is the methodology that I have to follow. So now, what happens to this person? What benefit does this person get who has understood the message of the Mahavakya? That is the next section of the Tattva Bodha. It talks about the Jnana Phalam. What is the fruit of this knowledge? So we will read that portion now. This is on the last page of the PDF that I had sent. Evam cha
Evam cha
Vedantavakyaihi
Vedantavakyaihi
Satguru Upadeshena cha
Sadguru Upadeshena cha
Sarveshvapi Bhuteshu
Sarveshvapi Bhuteshu
Yesham Brahma Buddhirutpanna
Yesham Brahma Buddhir Utpanna
Te Jivanmuktaha Bhavanti.
Te Jivanmuktaha Bhavanti.
So here, Vedanta, Tattva Bodha is giving out what is the Jnana Phalam. This is the last topic in Tattva Bodha. So we are approaching the end of the text now. Talks about what is the benefit that is gained from this knowledge. So it says, Te Jivanmuktaha Bhavanti. They become liberated. Even while living, they become Jivanmuktas. They become Jivanmuktas. Liberated even when living. So who become Jivanmuktas? Who become liberated even when living? Says, Yesham Brahma Buddhir Utpanna. Those in whom this Brahma Buddhi has come about. What does Brahma Buddhi mean? It means Brahma Jnanam. What is Brahma Jnanam? Is it different from Atma Jnanam that we have been talking about? No, they are the same. Brahma Jnanam is the Jnanam that Brahman is not different from this Atma. Atma Jnanam is the knowledge that this Atma is not different from Brahman. So Yesham Brahma Buddhir Utpanna, those who have understood that I am the Satyam Brahma, which is Purna. Te Jivanmuktaha Bhavanti, they become liberated even when living. How does this come about? How does this Brahma Buddhi come about? He says, Evam cha. In this manner, in the exact manner that we have discussed in the text, don't imagine that there is going to be some other method of gaining this Brahma Buddhi. I have taught you this method of gaining Brahma Buddhi. This is what the text is saying. Evam cha, in this manner. In what manner? He says, Vedantavakyaihi. Through these sentences of Vedanta, through these words of Vedanta. Using Vedanta as a pramana. We have said that no knowledge can arise without a pramana. Pramana is required, and Vedanta is the pramana. Vedanta is the means of knowledge. So Vedanta, what is it a pramana for? It is not a pramana for establishing the existence of this Atma. Because as we have said, I know that I am without any pramana. I don't need any means of knowledge to know that I am there, because I am the one who employs all the means of knowledge. Pratyaksha, Anumana, whatever means of knowledge there be, I have to be there to employ it. So I don't need a pramana to know I am there. As we have said, even in the darkest of rooms, when no pramana can be employed, even if I open my eyes, I cannot see anything. Even then, I don't have a doubt about my own existence. So Vedanta is not telling me you are existing. No, I know I exist. So what is Vedanta Pramana doing? I have made a lot of wrong conclusions about what this I is. I have mixed up the attributes of the RM with the RC, and I'm saying, I am this body, I am this mind, I am limited, I am mortal, I am suffering, I am going to die one day. I am a samsari. I have made all these conclusions. What Vedanta does is it revises all of these conclusions that I've made, wrong conclusions that I've made about myself, and replaces them with the right conclusion that I am Satyam Brahma, that is Purna. So here we have to recall the first and the second principles of knowledge that we discussed. That when an appropriate and adequate pramana comes in contact with the prameya, then knowledge takes place. Knowledge has to take place. I cannot will knowledge, nor can I will that knowledge should not take place. My will has no role to play in this. As we saw, Chaturthyam Chandrona Drashtavyaha, if I am going for a walk, evening walk on Chaturthi, and I have resolved I don't want to see the moon today, but if my eyes come in contact with the moon, then the moon knowledge takes place, even though I don't want it. And once the knowledge takes place, I cannot will it to be any different either. I cannot say, oh, moon knowledge, I don't want this, let it become an apple. No, let me see an apple. No, that's not possible. Knowledge is always true to the nature of the object. And therefore, this jnanam also has to take place through the Vedanta Vakyas. When one listens repeatedly, when one does Shravanam, the pramana is there. The prameya, the pramana, the means of knowledge, the Vedanta Vakyas are there. The prameya, the Atma is here and now. I know I am. Here and now I know that I am. The Vedanta Vakya, the pramana is there. The prameya, what is to be known is also here. Then, if there are no obstructions, then knowledge has to take place. That is the law. There can be obstructions in terms of lack of qualifications. And if one works on the qualifications and does the Shravanam, then Vedanta asserts the knowledge has to take place in somebody who is reasonably qualified. Now, what does this knowledge do? As we have said, it removes all of these false conclusions that I have made about myself, and it reveals this I, the very I about which I had made wrong conclusions. It revises my conclusion and helps me see that I am the Satyam Brahma. I belong to a higher order of reality, and everything else is in a lower order of reality. And because this is the case, I am Purnaha, being the Satyam of everything. So through this committed Shravanam and by cultivation of the qualifications, I come upon this knowledge. Of course, there is removal of doubts also involved. So Mananam has to follow Shravanam. And then there can be some habitual tendencies that even though the ignorance is now gone, out of sheer force of habit, one continues some of the past behaviors of identifying with the attributes of the reflecting media. That is possible. And that is why nididhyasanam, which means repeated dwelling upon this teaching, is required in order to erode the past habits. So Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasanam, in all of these, the Vedanta Vakyas are involved. They are involved in Shravanam. They are again involved in Mananam. And even during Nididhyasanam, I am dwelling upon the meaning of the Vedanta Vakyas that I already know. Vedanta Vakyahi. One has to come to this Brahma Buddhihi, is what Tattvabodha is saying. And those who have gained this Brahma Buddhihi, te Jivanmuktaha bhavanti. But then Tattvabodha mentions one more thing. In addition to Vedanta Vakyehi, Sadguru Padeshena. Sadguru Padeshena. So there are two things in Tritiya here, two things in the third case, Vedanta Vakyehi and Sadguru Padeshena. So are these two different things, meaning that I have to study the Vedanta Vakyas, and then also do I have to listen to, do I have to get some Upadesha from the Guru? This question can arise. We say that is not the case. Here, what we are talking about are the Vedanta Vakyas as taught by the Guru. Vedanta Vakyehi Sadguru Padeshena means Sadguru Padishta Vedanta Vakyehi. The Vedanta Vakyas that are taught by the Guru. Which means that one has to gain the knowledge of Vedanta as taught by the Guru. And as we have seen when we discussed who the Guru is, the Guru is not somebody who teaches his or her own philosophy. Student goes to the Guru and the Guru starts saying that, I have come up with this new way of gaining moksha or liberation. It is my own way that I have come across, and so on. And then he doesn't. A traditional Guru does not do that. Nor does the Guru teach the personal views on the subject. No. What does the Guru teach? The Guru teaches Vedanta as he has heard from his Guru. That is how the tradition flows. So first of all, the Guru converts the mumukshuhu into a jigyasuhu, a critical part of the Sadguru's Upadesha. Because as we have seen, unless the mumukshuhu becomes a jigyasuhu, his search for moksha can never come to a conclusion. The search for moksha has to transform into a seeking for knowledge. Only then the seeking for moksha, the seeking for this fulfillment can come to a conclusion. Just as the 10th man who was seeking for the 10th man has to listen to this person who has something to say, that you yourself are the 10th man. He has to gain the knowledge that he himself is the 10th man, otherwise his search can never come to an end. Therefore, the first thing the Guru does is convert the mumukshuhu into a jigyasuhu. And what is the second thing? He converts the jigyasuhu into a shushrushuhu. The seeker of knowledge has to realize that all knowledge requires pramanas, and none of the Laukika pramanas are going to work in help me gaining this knowledge. Only the Vedanta pramana can work, and therefore the Guru brings him to the Vedanta pramana as a means to gain the knowledge. Moksha is eka sadhana sadhyam. The sadhanam is only jnanam. Jnanam is also eka sadhana sadhyam. The sadhanam is the pramanam. All of this is a part of the Guru's Upadesha. And then the Sadguru Upadeshena and the Vedanta Vakya he combine. And what is the Guru teaching? He is teaching the Vedanta Vakyas because that is the pramana to gain the jnana. So the Guru and the Shastram are complementary. The Guru cannot be a Guru without the Shastra. Why? Because the Guru himself gained the knowledge through the Shastra only. And the Shastra cannot be a Shastra without the Guru. So without the Guru, it means that I have to do some kind of self-study of the Shastra. And Bhagavad Pada, Shankaracharya gives a strong warning here in the Bhashya, saying Shastrajñopi swatantriyena brahma jnananveshanam na kuryat. Even if one is well versed in Vyakaranam, Mimamsa, Tarka, etc., even if one knows the language, never do self study of the Shastra. Bhagavad Pada Shankaracharya is very clear about this. Therefore, Sadguru Padeshena, one has to go to a guru. As we have seen that this kind of self-study has got lots of problems. The first is that there is a cyclic kind of a situation. If one is trying to study by oneself, then it is like putting together these jigsaw pieces. Imagine a 500-piece jigsaw puzzle where the total picture is not given. So you have to somehow try to fit together these jigsaw pieces and create a picture out of it. You don't have the total picture. It's a futile effort. Therefore, unless one knows the whole, one cannot put each part in its perspective, in its proper perspective. But then one also cannot get the whole picture unless one goes part by part and understands the meaning of every part. And therefore, there is this cycle. One cannot know the whole unless one knows each part, and one cannot know each part unless one knows the whole. So, how is one going to study, do self study, and try to put together some kind of a consistent picture? It is impossible. Therefore, one has to know, go to a guru who knows this whole. And how did this guru know the whole? By going to his guru who knew the whole. And that is how this teaching has come through the Guru Parampara. The second point is that this is a very subtle subject matter. Even for less subtle things like understanding physics or chemistry or maths or dance or music, everybody goes to a teacher. This is a much subtler subject matter because it is about the attributeless Atma, it is about the attributeless Brahman that is beyond the range of all of our senses. This is the subtlest possible subject matter there is. And therefore, one requires a teacher who knows about this. And the third point is that if one is trying to do the self-study, then one will be just collecting information from disparate sources. The sources may themselves not agree with each other. And then one ends up with a heap of jigsaw pieces, and then one has to try to put this together. Impossible task. And as we have said, there is no replacement for a dialogue. Vedanta is not something that has to be believed. Vedanta is something that has to be understood. And it has to be understood without an iota of doubt. I cannot be liberated from the fear of the snake if I say that this may be a rope. I have to know for sure this is a rope and a rope only, nothing else. That is what frees me from the fear of the snake. Similarly, I cannot be liberated from samsara if I am saying that I may be this attributeless consciousness, I may be Brahman. That kind of a knowledge doesn't liberate one. One has to be convinced about it. This has to become my conviction. That is what liberates one from samsara. And for it to become my conviction, all these doubts have to be cleared. That is why a dialogue is needed with the Guru. And gradually, over a period of time, the vision of the Guru gets transferred to the disciple. This is how the communication happens. So as we saw, Sa Gurumeva Bhigachet Samitpani Shrotriyam Brahmanishtham. It uses the word Satguru here. Who is a Satguru? One who is a Shrotriya and a Brahmanishta. First of all, it should be a living Guru. Because we have seen that all of this dialogue, etc., and all of this clarification, etc., can be done only by a living Guru who brings the pramana alive in the teaching. One has to do the Shravanam. So a living Guru is required. And that Guru is a Sadguru, meaning a Shrotriya and a Brahmanishta. So Shrotriya is somebody who knows this method of teaching, the method of communication, because in the tradition there is a certain method in which this should be communicated. And there are certain pitfalls to avoid during the communication, because the communication, if not done properly, itself can create a trap for the disciple. And one has to be aware of what these possible traps are and make sure that one doesn't communicate in a manner that entangles the disciple in some of these traps. There is a certain method of teaching. There are all these various prakriyas that we are talking about. All of these prakriyas are handed down in the tradition. Just as one learns Carnatic music, one cannot learn Carnatic music by oneself. One goes to a teacher who teaches all of the different nuances of the tradition of Carnatic music. That is how one knows Carnatic music. That is true of all the traditional art forms. Similarly too, with the teaching of Vedanta, one learns about the teaching of Vedanta only by being a disciple of somebody who knows how to teach Vedanta. Therefore, this person must know how to communicate a Shrotriya. And the second is Brahmanishtha, meaning that the teaching should have fructified in this person as knowledge, meaning that this person is able to see that I am the Satyam Brahma, that is Purna. So there are two things. One is the communication, the other is the knowledge. Both are there in this kind of a guru, a Satguru. The knowledge is there, but communication is not there. That's a problem. As we have said, that can lead the disciple into several traps. And one of the most significant traps is that I have to experience this one day. That one day when I experience Brahman will never come. That is like the 10th man saying, I have to experience this 10th man one day. Even if that 10th man meets somebody who he thinks is the 10th man, he will very soon discover he is not the 10th man. Any kind of a moksha that I gain one day will never be the moksha that I am looking for. Moksha will never arrive one day. I have to see that moksha is my very nature. This is the communication. The second thing is the knowledge. So knowledge without communication can lead to a lot of traps. Whereas communication without knowledge may not be backed by that conviction. So this is the Sadguru Upadeshena, and we should not imagine that this Upadesha is something different from the Vedanta Vakyas. This Upadesha is nothing but consistent and systematic study of Vedanta. For a length of time, this is the Sadguru Upadesha. So, Vedanta Vakyaihi Sadguru Upadeshena Yesham Brahma Buddhirutpanna Te Jivanmuktaha Bhavanti. So let us not imagine some other mystical path to becoming a Jivanmuktaha. Tattvabodha says this is the method. This is the method employed by the tradition. This is how the traditional teachers who have taught Vedanta, this is how they arrived at Jivanmukti. There is no other method. Vedanta Vakyaihi Satguru Padeshena. Yesham Brahma Buddhir Utpanna. So in whom this Brahma Jnanam has arisen. What is this Brahma Jnanam? He say that Brahman can be known only in one way if it is known properly. Any other way of knowing Brahman is not Brahma Jnanam. That knowledge has to have a certain form. What is the form of the knowledge? That is Brahma Jnanam. It is I am Brahman. There is no other way of knowing Brahman. Because if there is any other way of knowing Brahman other than I am Brahman, it means that I have made Brahman into an object. The moment I make Brahman an object, it becomes limited. It is no longer Brahman. The only way of knowing Brahman is to not make it an object, meaning it has to be understood as the very subject, as me, myself. So the Mundaka Upanishad says, Yahavai tat paramam brahma veda saha brahma eva bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. How is it? In various fields, the knower of a particular thing doesn't become that thing. Like if we take this person who studies insects, that person is called an entomologist. So this person undertakes entomology. And then he would never undertake entomology if the knower of the insect becomes an insect. Nobody will study entomology. Thankfully, that is not the case. The entomologist doesn't become an insect. But Upanishad says the knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. How is it? Because he was already Brahman, he just did not know it. He did not know Brahman, he thought he was something else. Now he knows Brahman, he has become Brahman, that's all. First part, he did not know, now he knows. Just the knowledge has made this difference. He hasn't become anything new. He always was, he remains to be what he was. But he now knows what he really is. Earlier he did not know. Therefore, the knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. And at the same time, he understands, as Brahman, I am limitless. The Desha Parichinnatvam is not there because there is no place where I am not. Being the Satyam, because no Mithya place can limit the Satyam. Space itself is Mithya. Space itself arises in Brahman. So space cannot limit Brahman. Trikalepi tishtati, I am there at all times. Therefore, time cannot limit Brahman. And no object can limit Brahman because Brahman is the Satyam of everything. Therefore, there is freedom from these threefold limitations. He understands himself as being limitless. The words of Vedanta become his own words. It is no longer Vedanta says quote unquote. In fact, such a Jnani's words, they sound exactly like Vedanta. Vedanta's words. Why? Because he understands. His understanding is not different from the understanding of Vedanta. Vedanta's words have become his words, and then his words that expound upon Vedanta also become a pramana. The Guru's words also become a pramana like the Shastra's words because they are not different from the Shastra's words. The vision of Vedanta has become his own vision. So, in all of the experiences of life, whatever happens, he never forgets that I belong to this higher order of reality. I am this Satyam Brahma that is Purnaha. This Tanpura like Shruti continues throughout the concert of life. In any concert, there is always this Shruti in the background, the Tanpura Shruti, which is never not there. Similarly, this Jnanam is always there in the background in the Jnani's mind. Anytime ready to come to the foreground if the situation requires it. Like the Tanpura Shruti, it is there. So whatever happens, there are ups, there are downs. There is profit, there is loss, there is success, there is failure, there is decay, and even approaching death. There is never forgetting of the knowledge that I am the Satyam Brahma, that is Purnaha, I am Purnaha, I am Purnaha. This Shruti continues. This is the Brahma Buddhi Utpanna. And Sarveshwapi Bhuteshu. Sarveshwapi Bhuteshu, what he's saying here is that in all the beings, this person sees Brahman. So when the wave understands that I am water, at the same time, the wave also understands that I alone am in the form of everything. I alone am in the form of all these waves. When the ornament understands that I am gold, at the same time, the ornament also understands that I alone am in the form of all the ornaments. Similarly, when the Jnani understands that I am Brahman, at the same time, he understands that I am there in the form of all the Nama Rupas that I see here. Because I am the Satyam Brahma. As Satyam Brahma, I am Sarvatma. This Atma is Sarvatma. This is the Atma of all the beings. And that's why Krishna says in the Gita, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarvabhutashaya Stitaha. Aham Adishcha Madhyancha Bhutanam Anta Evacha. So when Krishna says this, that I am the Atma in all the beings, resident in the hearts of all the beings. At that point, Krishna is not talking about the Vachyartha. Krishna is not talking about his physical form anymore. So when we say Krishna is a Jnani, then even Krishna is a Jnani when Krishna is talking about the Lakshartha. The one consciousness that is behind the form of Krishna, that same consciousness is present in all the beings. That is what Krishna is talking about. So the Jnani's words are also exactly the same. The Jnani's thinking is also exactly the same. That is why the words of the Bhagavad Gita to a Jnani will appear like, yes, this is exactly what I have also understood. I have not understood anything different. The Jnani's understanding is the same as Krishna's understanding. Krishna says here, Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. Again, in all of these bodies and minds, I am that one Atma. So again, Krishna is referring to, when the Krishna says I, he is referring to himself as Brahman, as Sarvatma, that is there in all of the beings. Therefore, Sarveshwapi Bhuteshu. This Jnani sees that I, as Brahman, am the one behind all the names and forms in this creation. Te Jivanmuktaha bhavanti. So yesham brahma buddhir utpanna te jivanmuktaha bhavanti. They become liberated even when living. So liberated from what? Jivanmuktihi means muktihi from what? From samsara. Muktihi is muktihi from samsara. How does this samsara arise? We have discussed that there is this 3 steps to samsara. The first is ajnanam. Ajnanam means I don't know my real nature as this Satyam Brahma, that I am Satyam Brahma, that I am Purnaha. I don't know. And what does that lead to? It leads to adhyasa, the superimposition. I mix up the attributes of the RM with the RC. And then I start to say, I am this body, I am this mind. And the body and the mind are limited, and therefore adhyasa is apurnatvam. The apurnatvam comes in. The first step is ajnanam, the second is adhyasa. Adhyasa means that I have superimposed a variety of things upon myself that are all false, not really true. And therefore, it leads to apurnatvam. And then there is samsara. Because I cannot stand this apurnatvam, I cannot be comfortable with apurnatvam, and therefore I am trying to gain purnatvam. I am trying to gain fulfillment through actions in the field of artha, kama, and dharma. But all of these accomplishments that I accomplish in the field of artha, kama, and dharma, they don't address the fundamental cause of my apurnatvam, which is my own ajnana. It leaves the ajnanam intact. As we have said, all of this is like decorating the broomstick with a variety of ornaments. The broomstick remains a broomstick. I remain apurnaha in my own vision, even though I have accomplished a lot in the field of artha, kama, and dharma. And the world is inherently unpredictable, uncontrollable, unsustainable. And therefore, whatever accomplishments I have, they are all anitya. They keep coming and going. And therefore, if I am clinging on to them, it leads to helplessness, anger, frustration, depression. All of these are symptoms of samsara. And then there is old age and death awaiting everybody. Old age brings its own set of problems. It only makes this samsara more palpable. Because there is this federal problem that we talked about. There is fear of what is going to happen in old age. There is anxiety, there is insecurity. There is depression because all of this body and mind that I took to be myself, they are now failing me. There is regret of what I have done, about what I have done, what I have not done, and most importantly, there is this loneliness that I cannot stand. And therefore, this person has this sad ending. The samsari has a sad ending. So the endless struggle to gain fulfillment still continues because the ajnanam is there, the karana sharira is there. Therefore, another sukshma sharira, another sthula sharira, the same story repeats in the next janma. So the endless struggle to gain fulfillment. Samsara, this Jivanmukta is liberated from this samsara. So how does this samsara go? The samsara goes by the removal of this adhyasa, by the removal of apurnatva. How does the adhyasa go? By the removal of ajnanam. How does the ajnanam go? By bringing in jnanam. How does the jnanam come? Vedanta vakyehi Satguru padeshena cha. This is how the jnanam has to come. What jnanam? That I am the Satyam Brahma, tadanyat Atma Satyam, tadanyat Sarvam Mithyeti. So this liberation is to be gained in this life itself. That is why Jivanmuktaha bhavanti. He gains liberation in this life itself. It is not something that happens in future, that after death one travels to some loka. Vedanta rejects that idea of liberation. Because Shine Punye Martyalokam Vishanti. Etam bhuktva swargalokam vishalam kshine punye martyalokam vishanti. No matter what loka you go to, you will be a samsari there. Why? Because as long as ajnanam is there, apurnatvam will be there, one will be a samsari. One may enjoy for some time. The loka may give some conducive circumstances to enjoy once for some time. The samsara may recede in the background for some time. But then, kshine punye martya lokam vishanti, one has to come back. So Vedanta doesn't talk about this kind of liberation. The liberation here and now. In this life it is possible. Te jivanmuktaha bhavanti. And why is this possible? Why is such a liberation possible? Because the only thing that is separating you from this liberation is the ignorance. Ignorance that as Brahman, as Satyam Brahma, I am already liberated. I am Purnaha. Why don't I know this? Why don't I claim this? Because of ignorance. Therefore, the moment the ignorance goes, the knowledge comes, one can claim, I am liberated here and now. It is not an event that has to happen in the future. Therefore, Vedantavakyehi Sadguru Padeshena Yesham Brahma Buddhirutpanna Che Te Jivanmuktaha Bhavanti. One who knows one's own nature as Satyam Brahma, that is Purnaha, is liberated here and now. Such a one is a Jivan Muktaha. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Yes, Vishwaranj.
Satyanji, a few doubts today.
Yes.
In this today's topic only.
Sure.
According to the Shastras and scriptures, Atma is Swayam Prakashaka. That's what you told us many times. Self-revealing. Correct?
Yes. Yes.
And
yes.
If it is self-revealing, should we all know that automatically without any effort? That is the first question.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is, if pramanam, which means of gaining knowledge, can objectify entire objects in the world, why it cannot objectify the conscious also? No, though you have explained many classes, it has to go by the Vaidika Shabda Pramanam, not the Laukika Prasadhanam. Even then, this confusion exists in my mind. That's the reason I thought I will raise these two questions to you today. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the first question, we said that Atma is self-evident, right?
Correct.
So I don't have any confusion about whether I exist. Everybody, even an Ajnani, you talk to a child who knows nothing, hasn't even heard about Vedanta. The child will say, yes, I am there. So every being knows that I am there. There's self-awareness. To a lesser extent, the self-awareness is there even in animals also. They're not as palpably aware that I am there. But some rudimentary self-awareness is there in animals and even in plants to some extent. In all living beings, some kind of self-awareness is there. In human beings, it is very pronounced. And therefore, I can even speak about it. I can convert it into words and I say, I am, right? And I don't need any pramana to know I am. As we have said, even in the darkest of rooms, I don't have a doubt about whether I exist or not.
Correct.
But Atma, even though it is self-evident, right? This RC is mixed up with ignorance, right?
Ignorance. Yeah.
Ignorance. So because this ignorance is there, this self-evident Atma that expresses as this reflected consciousness associated with the Shariratrayam and associated with ignorance, that mistakes itself
It
to
continues.
be.
It
Yes,
continues.
sorry.
This mistaken of the
Ah,
ignorance continues throughout.
yes. So it mistakes itself and says, I am the body, I am the mind. So the I am is still there when I say I am the body, right? Even when you see the snake, right? The very rope has been mistaken to be the snake because of ignorance. So what you're looking at is really you're looking at the rope only, but you've mistaken it to be the snake. Similarly, when you say I am, you're referring to the Atma only. The self-evident Atma is being referred to as I am. But then, just as the snakeness was superimposed on the rope, I have superimposed these limitations upon my understanding of what the I am is. So the self-evident Atma is now mistaken to be this body and mind.
Yeah.
And therefore, this knowledge, we say that if there is one thing in this world that cannot go by itself, everything else in this world has a date of birth and a date of expiry. But one thing in the world that has no date of birth and which will not expire by itself is ignorance.
Okay.
Ignorance can go only through knowledge. And the knowledge can come only through a pramana. And therefore, if we wait and say Atma is self-revealing or self-evident and this ignorance will go by itself, it should go by itself, it will never happen.
Okay.
And that is why moksha has a purushartha. Just as one goes after artha, just as one goes after kamaha, just as one goes after dharmaha, one has to go after moksha. One has to seek moksha, and that seeking for moksha has to get converted into a seeking for jnanam. And that seeking for jnanam has to get converted into a seeking for shravanam. And that is when the possibility of this ignorance going comes.
Okay.
So that is the first question. And the second question, can you remind me what?
Yeah. So the pramanam, normal pramanam, which
Yes.
can reveals the entire objectivity of this world, all the objects.
Yes.
Why not it's objectify the same consciousness also?
Yes. So this question we had discussed to some extent when we discussed the pramana topics.
Right, I remember.
So the laukika pramanas,
Will
right?
not reveal.
Will laukika pramanas are outward directed. The laukika pramanas using our sense organs, they are all based on our sense organs, which are outward directed. So they can
Understood.
reveal various objects of the world, but the observer is never the observed. This is
You
the
told me so many
problems
times.
with
Yeah.
this is the problem with science also, right?
Yeah. You told.
Science is obsessed with the observed, and therefore this observer that is never the observed can never come under the purview of science.
Understood.
And therefore, this requires an entirely different pramana that can reveal the nature of the observer. That is why we say, Pratyakshena anumityava yastu payona buddhyate enam vidanti vedena tasmat vedasya vedata. Veda is the special pramana that can reveal certain things that are unknowable through the laukika pramana.
Perfect. One more last question connected to this.
Yes.
In today's topic, Jivanmukta, based on this understanding, I am the Brahman and
Yes.
everything I provided, everything, and this kind of Mananam, Nidityasanam, etc. If we do
Yes.
this, is it necessary to become, a sannyasi to know this? Not required?
Not required.
Okay.
Really speaking, sannyasa is a conducive lifestyle. A conducive lifestyle that helps do focus, shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam, etc. Right? So it helps. It can help, right, in speeding up of this whole process, for example.
Okay.
But that is not a necessity, because the Shastra itself talks about Grihastha Jnanis also. The Shastra is again the Praman. So Yagyavalkya, for example. In fact, he didn't have one wife, he had two wives, Maitreyi and Katyayana. But then he is one of the most exalted Jnanis that we have known about through the Shastra.
But many of the liberated jnani, what my understanding is through sannyasa ashram, like for example various Pidadipati, Shankaracharyas and all. That's what my understanding.
Yes. But as we are saying, that is a conducive lifestyle that leads to liberation.
Okay.
But that doesn't preclude a Jnani Grihastha. The Shastra has given numerous examples of Jnani Grihasthas also. In fact, all of the rishis that we talk about, they were Grihasthas.
Okay. Correct.
And similarly, Krishna himself was a Mahagrihastha in some ways.
Correct.
With 16,000 wives. He was still liberated.
Yeah.
Of course, he was an avatara, so you can talk about Krishna as being some kind of an exception. He was not a normal grihastha in that sense. But
Correct.
Vyasacharya,
Yes.
who himself is the author of the Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna, who is the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita, were both grihasthas. The Shastra doesn't preclude a grihastha from regaining the jnanam. Only condition it places is sadhana chatushtaya sampattihi.
Correct.
As long as qualifications are there, it doesn't matter one is a grihastha or a sannyasi.
Very good. Very, very nice. Thank you.
Yes, Rama?
I'll go in the reverse order. So just to add to that point, I hope you don't mind me saying this.
Sure.
I just also always wondered, I've had the same question about Grihastha, how hard it is. So I don't know about the rishis. Yeah, even Janaka Maharaj, right? He's considered a Videha Mukti. So
Yes.
it's completely different times. And it just takes a lot more effort for people like us to get in that path, and there is no denying about it. We have to put a lot of effort to get in that path,
Yes.
being a
Yes. Yes.
grahastha.
Yes.
So this just needs unbelievable control of all the senses, everything, shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam. So I don't think you can take away the fact that it is super hard. So that was the point I wanted to make about whether
Yes.
sannyasis are needed. And about the first question, Atma being self-revealing, correct me if I'm wrong, about the reflected consciousness and original consciousness. So the
Yes.
reason that I think I'm just saying what you're saying in a slightly different way from the Drigdrishya point of view, is that so our if you take our face, we can't see our own face, and we
Yes.
see it in a mirror, and
Yes.
then that mirror is reflecting my face being the consciousness, original consciousness, and it's being reflected as the reflected face. And as long as the mirror is very dirty, very convex or concave, like the way you explained, you'll always see you won't see the original face at all. So that's why it's not
Yes.
self-revealing at all. So
Yes.
as
Yes.
long as your mind and intellect and everything is so cluttered and so um, not seeking it, or and you're not bothering
Yes.
to clean it up,
Yes.
you're always going to see a distorted face, or rather the original face is not going to be clearly appearing to you. And eventually the mind and the intellect, which serves as the mirror, um, will go away, and you will realize this is the original face. Is that roughly the understanding?
Yes. Yes. a few points I would add there is that the mirror and the reflected consciousness don't have to go away for you to know that you are the original. That is, the mirror and the reflected consciousness being there, right? I can still understand that I am the original that is not affected by these two. That is just like the gold understanding without having to melt the bangle and the ring and the necklace, etc. I don't have to melt them all to understand that I am the gold. They can be there, right? But I set them aside in my understanding of who I am. So the mithya doesn't have to go away for the satyam to become satyam. In fact, this is what leads to this understanding or misunderstanding that nirvikalpaka samadhi alone, right? That experience alone somehow is going to give me this knowledge. We say that that is not true. The knowledge always comes through a pramana. I can see that the earth, the sun is rising and setting. I can appreciate the experience of the sun rising and setting, but at the same time, I can know that the sun doesn't rise really speaking, doesn't set really speaking. It is the earth that rotates. So the experience can continue to be the same, but the knowledge is entirely different. So one can continue with the body mind. One can continue with the experience of the body mind. But that experience based conclusion, see, earlier I thought I'm experiencing the body mind, therefore I am the body mind. That entire confusion is now revised with the study of Vedanta that says that even though I am experiencing the body mind, it is an upadhi that in no way affects me, who is the Atma.
Beautiful.
Perfect.
Okay. Sure.
Perfect, sir. Thank you so much. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari
Hari
Om.
Om.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Thank you.
Hari Om.